It's Monday. It's March 6th, 2022. Um, I was watching a couple of pieces this morning, and how across the programming scale of what they put on today, what is this overall message? On one hand, I look to the past of black and white television and my three sons. Um, and this morning they had on an episode called the Wiley Method. Um, so that was interesting. Although it locked up, I can't seem to access it now from Lewis's television. Don't know why. Technical difficulties, I suppose. But I know what it meant. I know what the method was. Um, then there is this other TV show that I caught in a modern world. It's called Odd Squad. It's ODD. Now, in one of those moments in my overall existence, before I had children, I was in a room. I was given clothing to wear for some special meeting. I was waiting in the room in order to get dressed in these special clothes to have the special meeting. I don't know where this room was. Again, I mean, I've been on air flights where I bought a ticket for what I thought was my destination. And unless there was some kind of announcement that that's not where we were landing, and even if there was an announcement, doesn't mean I was awake at the time the announcement was being made to remember it, and it also does not guarantee that I remembered it thereafter. So anyhow, so I was in this room. I was with someone who was going to be, I don't know. I don't know the words to use for this person. Chaperone, I suppose. Um, anyhow, he was, I suppose he's the one who was assigned that I was to listen to, and to trust throughout my duration of wherever this room was. And so it was a white collared shirt, and it had embroidering on it, just two simple characteristics. It was double D's in a yellow thread with khakis. I don't know what this was about. I don't know with whom we met, but I know someone knows what that significance means. And this was prior to I walk through each length of this life not knowing what the future beholds. But yet I have a very special phenomenon that I created between myself and one of my children in particular, which is far more significant than stardust on a blank canvas. There are those that know it, and there are those that must honor this position in certain things being whatever. Why it has unfolded in actuality in such a disintegratous way, I'm not clear. Why the baby was taken from me and forced to live amongst strangers who can't even verify that they have any relation whatsoever to this child other than a certificate for which they're under the assumption, which they're not under the authority to assume at all, that just because there's a certificate with someone's name on it that I was trying to exit a relationship with, but was having difficulties on my own. Anyhow, but prior to that seemingly innocent whatever, early on in my season before, I guess while they were choosing who, I mean, there was supposed to be an assignment. I mean, there was an assignment early on of who my family member was. Why there would be this rearrangement, I'm not clear. Especially if it had to do with local area security and events that they were, whatever, aware of. I mean, so anyhow. So I'm watching this Odd Squad, and I'm watching who they theoretically chose to portray and characterize seated in a chair of some sort. And then they appear at this, they're in charge of investigating this Odd Squad, this ODD, things that are out of order or out of the ordinary. And so they're in a supermarket, this guy's mustache. I mean, again, I arrived in 78 to a peanut farmer in the White House. I live locally. I went to the Boy Scouts of America for my child's sake. And on there was a reminder of a very specific former U.S. American president and family member along the Roosevelt category for this area, which is commonly known. We then went to the mall, also named after Roosevelt, in the Roosevelt Field. And that's what's in my local area still. Theodore Roosevelt is known for the national parks system in this area. That, again, to peanut farmer, is important. So I'm watching how they display this Odd Squad. I'm not happy at several levels, but I don't know how the read is on this screenplay. I'm mentioning it strictly for the reason of they're in a supermarket. This is what some kids are exposed to and learning. Now, if the kids are exposed to and learning and they're interested in this magical idea of a wizard and concept of a wizard, does that mean that they will be slated to go on to astronomy and become astronauts and have that opportunity? Or are they going to be reshuffled and taught that they have mental disease and they're going to become pin cushions for the pharmaceutical industry? Gets confusing around here in who's in charge and how they're choosing children in order to have a nice life. considering I'm of a very specific bloodline and I've been harmed. And on top of the bloodline, I also have this very important celestial position in astronomical terms between my creation and then the creation of the next gen, just so level up doesn't get confused. So I'm watching that with a keen eye, wondering, I mean, I know I see in books like this sci-fi, and then I'm watching something unfold before me. It's El Museo Hiko. Again, just to my south, geologically, or geographically, there is a continent of humans that speak something like they taught there was this Latin umbrella of 3 languages. I speak English, I speak North American. Totally different. But somewhere else geographically, they speak something called Latin. And then that gets confusing because there's the Latin languages, there's the Greek-based languages, and like on a linguistics, and like I'm novice on this. I'm not an aficionado, but I know a little bit more than the rest just through my however time and space works. So there's that. Then under this Latin agreement, it is further broken down into there are 3 what they call Romance languages, because Latin has its own, for lack of a better term, ideogram, anagram, ideogram, like, I don't even know the proper term. I'm watching epithet, and I'm like, now that sounds à la tête, à la bec, à la tête. So I've tried to learn 2 of the 3, 2/3 of the Latin system. Although then there's the quarter, but I learned the 2/3 that kept with a 26 letter an alphabet system. These are important details because there's another Latin language for which I'm like, it is like, this morning, some of it I can sit there and I listen to the intonations and incantations and I'm like, all right. But this morning on comes El Museo Antropologico, which means the Museum of Anthropology, which I have never even heard in North America in English. Like, the word anthropology was not spoken. I've heard it used on TV shows like Ancient Aliens, but it wasn't taught and it wasn't something that was known. And then I'm looking at what the visual reference in this language I don't even speak. I'm trying. At least I try to understand what it says and put the words with the visual together in order to get some kind of like baseline. But I'm watching it and it's talking about the sun and the stars, and then it's looking at a constellation. So now, of course, it's caught my attention. Plus, it's in a language that for me, it might as well be Chinois or Chinese. I know it's under this umbrella because that's what's been the standard teaching methods of this area in this hemisphere. But it sounds like a dialect of Spanish that I'm unfamiliar with. And I'm watching this and I'm like, now what what does that mean in like a real terms? Because is that, I mean, that's got to be somebody else's reality. I just don't know where that exists. In cross referencing and crossing over in graduations. So that happened this morning. So I have that as an example. Um, and it looks a little like what's mentioned in Harry Potter. I think it's the Goblet of Fire, or maybe it's the Order of the Phoenix. I'm not sure. But I saw yesterday in the movie series in an English that I can understand linguistically, but they're referred to as something different. The Ministry of Magical something or other. And again, in the front facing rooms with this constellation of 4 children that I'm not claiming fathership of. I mean, I have the fat her. I mean, I created them with my own body, but there is no reality that's ever been spoken of that there's some magical ministry that exists, that I'm able to, in a daily effect, carry forward that memory. It's none of the humans speak of it. I've never heard it mentioned. And then there's this, like, I've seen it on television. I've seen it referenced in books, but the people associated with this magical ministry, where they actually exist, nobody knows. I mean, nobody speaks of it. So if there's a problem, how does one alert the system? So then I'm looking for, all right, so Jimmy Carter was a very special man in U.S. history. He believed in, I don't know, do I say Catholic things? He was Baptist. I don't know what that means in human terms. He says he's, I guess that makes him a Christian. So then I'm watching Andrew Womack this morning, and I'm like, now he looks in a cousin's corner of men that speak a language that I think I kind of understand. I'm looking for words of wisdom from he, thinking that he might be one, like, is he considered like in the family tree ministry of something that a Jimmy Carter, who is an acceptable and important man in this area? I mean, like, are those words of intelligence? Or so I'm really struggling with this because I feel like ill begot and ill prepared. I'm also simultaneously this morning looking at the bottoms of my feet, which almost look yellow. Yesterday I sat on the couch with my legs up. My heart is having these weird dips in rhythm where it beats really low, like in the 40s and 50s, while I'm at rest, even though I go out for exercise, and I'm able to still get it into the hundreds range, for like cardio output and cardio works. So I have circulatory help. But this yellowing at the bottoms of the feet, again, as far as amino acids, with how are the proteins breaking down? Is there too much vinegar in the blood, nutritionally? And I'm drinking the water, and the water is, I don't know. Again, I keep filling this up. I reuse these. So I keep filling this up with the Brita filtered tap water. And then I keep a count of how many I use. I wash them out, and I keep reusing them. So I'm watching my water intake. I'm measuring all of it. Um, and my feet are still turning yellow. My heart is having these weird, out of the ordinary, like dips in almost, they're calling it an AFib. I see now a commercial for ATTCM. Never heard of that before. I hear this word gout. I don't know what that is. Um, like these are like dialectic terms, I guess, for like hometown security. I don't know. Then I mean there, and I have to say, like, if the situation I'm in is really hard to speak about, based on what I'm surrounded by, that don't look familiar. They don't look like family members of Jimmy Carter or Theodore Roosevelt. They don't look like family members of President Trump. They don't look like family members of Franklin Roosevelt. They look like they're some foreign entity that is now stationed here for some reason or in some whatever. And I have no idea what that entails. So I'm looking at this and I'm looking at what I'm surrounded by. Um, and I'm looking at the health effects of the carcinogens and the amount of carcinogens. So, on the one hand, the security team, whoever they are, from my local Queens area, over the last few months, I have noticed I was walking almost religiously. I was walking silently in my own whatever. I walked with an umbrella just to gain silent attention. That's strange. I mean, like, again, I'm not going to put on wizarding robes with a big cone hat and walk the streets. I'm not putting tinfoil on my head to grab sensational attention. I'm not that lady. I'm a different type of lady entirely. So, I dress in all black and I put on sunglasses even at night. I put on a hat to cover my hair just so I'm trying to be respectful at multi levels without disrespecting. It's a baseball cap. It looks very American. And so I wore a bonnet at one point. I wore an umbrella, like a parasol during the sun. It made sense. At night, people were like, "Oh, that's strange." Yeah, it is strange. But you know what? It wasn't hurting anyone. And it made a point, to the point where I passed someone and she called me the umbrella lady. Whatever. I'm not an EDP. I've got whatever going on in monitoring several different area events. And so there's this decrease. I noticed I started having issues. When I look back at the videos, I can see some of the disturbances in some of the receiving signals of wherever thought comes from, and whatever the physiological changes are, more at like a noetic science level. I was having disruptions, but at this point, I'm unable to discern whether it was strictly physiological or whether it was some divine process of interaction, almost like where are those invisible puppet strings that we move off of in celestial events and in calendar events that somebody has the schedule. I don't know it myself before I get there, but somebody does. At large area management of living, breathing humans. So I noticed during this time period where I was doing a lot of walking, I was having trouble with my legs already. I was having trouble with my health already. But I was walking Bell Boulevard and I was making notes. I was speaking at that point to the NYPD poll again, because where else do you speak to them directly? They took away like Superman's like whatever, in what are the trendy, acceptable points of reality in order to connect with an audience that I mean, like, I'm not a superhero. Like, I've seen their stuff. It has importance. I look for the intelligence and the message behind the marks, but whatever. So, but anyhow, so there's that. And then there was a lot of carcinogenic traffic that seemed unrealistic. I'm like, why is there so many fumigation and pollutant machines coming through Bell Boulevard and Bayside? Almost like caravans of somebody else's army trying to purposely come into Bayside area and toxically fumigate with carcinogens. Because I mean, like, I don't have access to um, the fuel industry and who's fueling up where and then going for a ride and then trying to harm. I mean, like, there's a lot of tribal stuff and like gang related stuff that goes on in New York that I don't know about. So, like, is it theoretically possible? Yeah, it is. Who are they targeting? I'm not really sure, but I'm here and it affects me. So, back to I don't know who to thank, but what I've noticed is since I was broadcasting and what seems like erratic, like displays of anger or whatever, but not necessarily targeted at anyone specifically. I'm just mad at kind of the world. So, in that sense of, so there's no one target because there may be several. I was incredibly angry, but sat in my car by myself. I didn't yell at people. I wasn't yelling at my parents. I wasn't even showing that side to my son. It's just me and the phone and a video log of just how lonely and isolated this area is. So anyhow, so at that point, there was a lot of sirens. There was a lot of unnecessary emergency management traffic. There was a lot of unnecessary deliveries. There was a lot of unnecessary, and at all hours, like I mean, in small nano management, put them on a schedule. Trucks come in through a specific time, and that's it. I mean, like, so this way you cut down on the carcinogen effect of the pedestrians, and then you keep an eye on the amount of passenger traffic. Where are these passengers driving from? Why are they not going cross island? And has Cross Island, because it seems like Cross Island Parkway is always packed going over the bridge. Why? Where are all these people going? Why are they traveling so much? Why is there such an increase in carcinogenic fumes for the local population? This is not healthy for us. Then how many of the population in my area are actual permanent residents who are suffering under these conditions? Or are they from some other country that just has a second residence here just to hold a spot for I don't know what, but they're not suffering as I am under these conditions? In who's the actual manager? So there's that. So whoever is in charge of whatever that is, I've noticed that the traffic on Bell Boulevard between deliveries and between passenger traffic seems to have got an emergency service traffic with sirens and whatever seems to have slowed down. I mean, it's still very busy. Again, it's a business district. They want people going to their businesses and shopping in their stores. I get that. But that's not what was driving through here. I mean, and again, So it's gone down a bit. I tried rerouting myself to a less exposure to carcinogenic whatever, but it's here and there's a lot of it. And I don't have a way of getting away from this in order to preserve my own health. It's like I'm trapped here with no money, no way out, while all of the, like all these other concerns that are not my concerns seem to take priority and precedence while I'm trapped here, making it into a more serious situation for myself. So I'm cognizant of that as well. So I'm going to go back to these pieces that they put on worth mention from this morning. Okay, so there's this thing called Odd Squad, and it's season 2, episode 26. The date that it aired was Monday 3/6, and it's 2023. This is what it looks like. And it says the original air date was 11/18/2017. I saw it today for the first time. And it says hands on a desk chair. There's no O in Obot. The agents must figure out who is in charge when Miss O leaves for a super secret mission. And this is what it looks like. And again, on this type of theater, I'm just curious, are these supposed to be like the astronauts of the future? Or are these going to be the group of children that are designated somehow into like these carcinogenic pens with like drugs, street drugs moving through that are like pretty much sentenced to death without knowing it? Just curious, because like they keep talking about mental disease, and I'm like, now what qualifies as mental disease? Because I don't go out on the street and talk about witches and wizards and whatever, but I do see a whole lot of trendy references that it exists in someone else's reality. And if I need to connect with a human that believes in witches and wizards and whatever, in a, I don't know what science, I mean, I've met a scientist who called himself a principal. That I appreciated. That was something new. He didn't come right out and say, I practice wizardry. I met a really important person once he was on a treadmill, I was on an elliptical, and he said that he was into numerology and astrology. Thought that I was like, what? I lost my speech. I did not know how to answer that. I was not prepared for that. I'm like, wait. I was like, you are the first person in my life to ever say those two words. I was like, what do they call that? And he just went with, he just repeated the two words again.
Strange, weird, and especially odd. Our job is to put things right again. Who do we work for? We work for Odd Squad. Hands on a desk chair.
Thanks for coming, Odd Squad.
What seems to be the problem, sir?
Well, every time I scan an item, it's easier if I just show you.
Wow, your mustache is going.
I would say moved is a better word. And watch this.
Well, this is unfortunate.
And it just keeps going around and around and around, then around, then around, then around, then around.
Now, this display of something seems so frivolous, seems so absurd, so non-important that the children watch. They seem to really enjoy this kind of stuff. But in the moment, doesn't necessarily have any particular meaning other than it's like, would that really happen? His mustache? No. But in a parallel paradox, if whoever's wearing the mustache gets to speak and gets to be in charge, and then all of a sudden now it's just going around in a circle. I mean, again, I see where it could have importance, but again, depends on the intellectual construct that one is having a conversation on. I don't know that it always remains the same in every room everyone ever enters. I mean, for me, it's been a series of rooms.
Oh,
Sir, stop. Please stop. Actually, can you do 2 more times, please?
so, any ideas how to fix this?
Most mustache problems are caused by curses sometimes. See anyone's
A curse of some kind is what the child's reaction is. And then they ask if he's ever seen a wizard or if has seen a wizard around. Different level of detectives than I think what NYPD is used to. Because I think if you asked an NYPD rep if they deal with wizards and wizardry, they would lock you in a cage and call you an EDP and ignore the situation completely. Not sure if it's under what their instructions are. Don't know if they're fully, intelligently briefed on the severity of the situation of what's really going on. And I'm not sure if they have a chain of command that actually knows how to deal with this level of stuff in the field, or if they have designated reps already. Some you pay attention to, some you don't. I'm not clear.
strange around here that might have cursed you?
Well, now that you mention it, you see that wizard over there?
Yeah, that's definitely strange. Sir, stand back. We've trained extremely hard for this. No way! Shoot! Go on, let's get out. See you later. Agents, I'm off to Sector 218 to conduct a super secret mission. Olympia, pass me that blender. So, where? Oh, this, pass me that hypnosis field. So, you still haven't told us anything about this mission? No time to explain. The fate of the world is at stake. So, what can we do to help?
The fate of the world is at stake. She's wearing purple. Again, this gets really on that cuspid of
Follow some instructions when I'm in position. Look alive, people.
We'll be ready, Miss O.
Preparing to squishinate. Wait, who's in charge? Squishinate. I say whoever touches her chair first is the one in charge.
now. Cosmically, there's this in a James Webb telescope looking into deep dark space of nothingness and trying to study gas as an artwork form. I have a superstar position, and one could theorize that if I was to paint it in nebulous gas, it might appear that there is two galaxies, or what humans use as the word galaxy, and then almost like an umbilicus that forms, or some kind of tunnel that forms between the two star formats, or the two galaxy formats, or again, I don't know their words because I'm not amongst them. So in the Wiley method, just whatever. So my creation, and then the creation of my one son in particular, and this funnel creates an anchor system where there are it's a symmetrical phenomenon. I have other children which are asymmetrical. Again, looks more like star dust, except I have this constellation piece now because I have this anchor. So my entire womanhood in nebulous gas, in a vacuum of time and space that's just blank canvas, looks a lot differently than other women. Just does. So there's an asymmetrical portion. might be symmetrical to them in some mathematical format, but it's not a standard that I'm looking at for whenever I speak. I have this symmetrical portion in future and the here and now. And then there's other humans that were created, but they look like they're flecks of or spattered paint in comparison and in relation. So as far as wizard and wizardry, where that ever exists in energy field, when my health is being damaged and my ability to stand upright and like a marionette kind of a way and use my legs properly and use my circulatory system, and when my energy points are not being energized properly and keeping a healthy system, there are really large scale at planetary level concerns that I have.
We need to get a hold of ourselves. I don't want to know. Me either. I need this.
We can't all be Miss O.
Sounds like we need a competition. Oh, what now? Last one holding on to Miss O's chair gets to run headquarters while she's away. If you take your hand off of the chair for even a second, you're out.
I'm not necessarily agreeing to this. Why would competition ever break out? I am who I am. My son is who he is. And I have a very specific need. And there should be a chain of command already established.
Since Coach O made up the rules, should he at least shake on it so we know he's being honest? Uh-oh. Looks like someone let go of the chair. I really thought I'd be better at this. Game over, Coach. One down, 5 to go. Go for Owen. Owen, I'm in phase 1 of the mission. I need you to shut off the security alarms in sector 218 so I can get a bowling team to safety. Miss O, didn't you just leave like 30 seconds ago? I didn't take care of Mr. Hawk. What am I supposed to do? I guess you'll have to take your hand off the chair and deal with the alarm situation. Owen, I need an answer. Guys, if Miss O fails her mission, she's coming straight back here. And then none of us will have the chance to run headquarters for the day.
Oh, tell Miss O you're on it. I have an idea.
I'm on it, Miss O. There we go. Nothing to see here, people.
So now, I don't know, is this supposed to be like at another level of government? Perhaps. Like when you have to sit on some security council chair? I mean, for this one, they're using what looks like a jackrabbit with antlers. Don't know like where that's really important, but seems kind of important. And then they go throughout the day. I think that's actually very cleverly done, I have to be honest. Forget the modeling agency and the casting director. Seems to be a bit of an issue, but I don't know if they're just using some hybridized standard that broke out at some point in modern times with modern technology and modern management. Not clear. I don't know if this is just at common area or is this at like the upper chamber of the lords. Again, I've heard such things exist. Now, when I walk the streets of New York and Long Island, as of my later years, there is this very large, I never hear French spoken, ever. I don't even really hear Creole spoken, ever. What I hear a lot of is something that they consider Spanish, which again is not a 26-letter alphabet. We're in an English territory. It's 26 letters. English, French, and Italian. 2/3 of the modern Romance languages. 26 letters. And then I think Spanish, which is under that Latin Romance, whatever, has 3 extra letters for I don't know what reason, characteristically. but it is a distinction of difference. So now here I am watching something called a Cantinflas show, which doesn't even have a translation into English. So I have no idea. I mean, like, and I'm like, well, CAN, is that supposed to be like a Canada? And then it's got a TIN. Is that like a tax identification number? And then the flaws in the system, FLAS, and like loss. What? I don't know. At Anthropologico. So this is what this looks like.
Un telescopio hacia el firmamento, acercando a sus ojos los astros distantes. Y entonces la luna dejó ver por vez primera sus desiertos mares y sus apagados cráteres.
Aquí, hijo, mire nomás, don Gali, la Vía Láctea. Pues con razón, la leche ha subido tanto y está por las nubes.
Aquel primitivo anteojo reducía distancias y acercaba los objetos.
Pero cómo no, esa es la constelación del Can Mayor y le estoy viendo hasta las pulgas.
Aquella noche memorable, la astronomía había nacido como ciencia.
Now I cannot understand when they speak. Je ne sais pas, non sais. I don't know. I don't know what they're saying. I am visually intrigued by whatever this display is because of what's going on and what I have going on. But I don't understand the language. I don't know in dialects. I don't know what province this comes from. I don't know under whose leadership this comes from. I have no idea. And I don't know how to vet that either.
Y pudo verse que el planeta Saturno tenía dos anillos.
Como sean de compromiso, me lo casan 2 veces.
Así como también se supo que en la superficie del Sol había manchas solares.
Pues eso sí va a estar difícil. Ni modo de mandarlo a desmanchar.
Pero antes Galileo había inventado la bilancheta, esa balanza tan usada hasta nuestros días por los vendedores ambulantes.
Échale, échale. ¿Cómo que kilos de 800 gramos por 10 florines? Si empezamos por inflar la inflación, pues ¿a dónde vamos a parar?
Igualmente aún puede verse en la Catedral de Pisa la lámpara que inspiró otro de los descubrimientos de Galileo, el péndulo.
Now, does this have to do with the emporium? A word I never hear here, except I went to go visit a family member just recently, and she's my linguistic whatever. She was in New York when I was younger, and then she moved away. But it's Lewis's sister, and so she mentions this word emporium, which I had never heard, and I'm like, that is such an interesting way to speak of what they call around here a supermarket.
Parece una tontería, pero gracias a eso se inventaron los relojes y pudo medirse el tiempo.
No comas ansias, que ya te van a dar tu alpiste.
Pero lo más importante de los hallazgos de Galileo fue probar que la Tierra gira sobre su propio eje y alrededor del Sol, como 10 años antes lo había sospechado el gran polaco Copérnico. En aquella época era una herejía afirmar que la Tierra se moviera, y Galileo fue llevado a Roma ante el Tribunal del Santo Oficio. Y por afirmar que la Tierra se mueve, lo cual es contrario a las Sagradas Escrituras, se le ordena retractarse y afirmar la estabilidad de la Tierra y la movilidad del Sol. No se raje. Usted aguante. De no hacerlo, se le dará tormento y será condenado a prisión perpetua. Ah, no. Así ya cambia. Rájese, don Gato. Rájese. Más vale que digan, aquí corrió que aquí murió. Lo juro. La tierra está inmóvil.
I have no idea what that means. Well, I don't even have a person to ask. Interestingly enough, in orders of operation and whatever's going on, I use the word run very loosely. I look more like a stroke patient who is trying to, or somebody who is suffering under some neuromotor whatever degenerative disease that is trying to maintain every shred of muscle fiber that I still have access to. And I don't know why my feet are yellow. I don't know why my heart, my circulatory system seems to be shutting down. I don't know why my blood just miraculously disappeared out of my body where I needed a blood transfusion. There's a lot of integrated security features in this area that concern me, but I have whatever. So I'm doing whatever I can on a daily basis. So there was this person who shows up, one of the characters in this whatever, on the schedule, I suppose. Not my schedule, but whatever, however you can explain that. Shows up, calls himself Michael. Now, not to be confused with like Houston, we have a problem, and with whatever Zappa was in the flagpole by the whatever. So this particular Michael came once upon a time, and he found me at the French workshop, and he bought me a sandwich, which I thought was really nice because at that point I was having trouble with Lynn and Lou. And he had on some kind of what looked like a soccer jersey, and whatever. So he bought me a sandwich at the French workshop, although he seemed to be Latin in his way of speaking, an accent or dialect. That would have been my first guess if I had to assume something. And then whatever takes off. I haven't heard or seen from him, and I don't even know how long because I have it documented on my YouTube, but I have no idea what month, what year. So anyhow, so I'm running around the lake and in my daily exercise, and I see he passes me, and again I haven't seen him or whatever, but it's one of those like weird. I mean, like again, it feels like a staged event. He's like, wait a minute. He's like, and I'm like, yeah, no, I know who you are. And he's like, Michael. And I'm like, right, yeah, no, I know. And he was like, oh, and then starts running with me. And he was like trying to tell me that he had kissed me. And I'm like, no, wrong person. Wasn't me. I said, you bought me a sandwich at one of the local shops. That was it. There was nothing else ever. So anyhow, so that was interesting. And on that day, whatever was around the lake, because there were photographers, there were all sorts of things that happen in my daily run around the lake, but I'm never sure who's on tree watch or whatever goes on. But I do notice that these things are there along with this, like what looks like a RV from like the Breaking Bad series. I mean, like there's one of those parked religiously around the lake for security purposes and whatever. So I noticed like these staged pieces, like on the set of my life. I noticed they're there. Anyhow, so on that particular day that this guy Michael showed up, the one that's this soccer whatever, he had a soccer jersey on. This time he had 2 letters embossed on his thing, read AF, just so double D doesn't get confused. Um, and so he's running around. And he's telling me that he's a soccer coach, and he's from Georgia, and now he's up in New York, and he's gonna teach soccer. I'm like, oh, soccer must pay very well. And so anyhow, um, but he couldn't run, and I'm like, aren't coaches athletically, physically fit? I mean, like, again, I don't really know any coaches, but so anyhow, I wound up, I wanted to run, so I wound up leaving him behind. But I said goodbye at least. I didn't just take off. Because I want to keep my pace. Because again, I've got this cardiac muscle I'm trying to work on. Um, so whatever on that. But I had a special code on my Fitbit. My Fitbit had a special code that day that he showed up. I have several different codes, but it was whatever it was in my log of whatever. Um, and yesterday, I had a code go off, which was interesting. I didn't have like people experience or interactions yesterday in quantum entanglement or whatever considered that for security purposes. But um, I had yesterday a code go off on the watch, and I was having more of like an ergonomic entangled issue with just as far as like energy movement of the physiological. I really was having trouble yesterday with maintaining heart rate and pace. Like it was a real struggle, and my legs were not heavy yesterday. It was just an overall system trudgery, like just real I don't know, not motivation, because again, I normally just sit back into the workout and I just pay attention to the body mechanics, and I get lost in the music and I just go like on an automatic. I know I have 8 laps, I just go. But yesterday, my focus kept getting pulled off and away, and I had to keep like moving it back into alignment with, no, you're here. And like motivating myself, which I normally don't have to do, because once I motivate myself to get out of the house, but once I'm out of the house, it's like, we're doing this, we're committed, we're going, that's it. But again, yesterday I was having trouble with that, but it did bring up a very special code yesterday. I don't know what it was related to. Yesterday was a 150 code. Um, and I don't know what that signifies in whatever it is, in whatever. But it was different than the code the day that the guy showed up. Um, so anyhow, so that's real life, what's going on with like mechanical measurement, that now I at least know there's something going on. And I know it's coded specifically in file of whatever and wherever. So now I'm going to go to a piece that they put on from this level of, I don't even speak this language, but yet it's being broadcast here. When I go into certain stores, it's all they speak here right now. I mean, like, there's the English, like, this guy, Michael, at least he tried to speak English to me, but I'll go into stores where these people who are living here don't even speak English, not even as a second language. And I'm like, I don't speak Spanish, and I was here first. What am I supposed to do? So I'm watching. There's something called Bloody Sunday. I didn't know that was real. I thought that was just a song, like I heard on the radio from the Beatles. I didn't know it was an actual thing. But President Biden was there. It's in his life frame, not in mine. About this Bloody Sunday. So I'm listening to his words of wisdom. As the I mean, like, I don't know. Is it too much? I mean, like, he gets this president title I don't want people to be jealous if like he's considered the father of the nation right now. Because again, like I don't want to like stir up conflict, but I don't know how to address him properly at the level that he's supposed to be appreciated at.
They're marching across the Edmund Pettus Bridge where police and state troopers attacked voting rights demonstrators 58 years ago. Mr. Biden called for new government action to protect the right to vote.
Right to vote, to have your vote counted, is the threshold of democracy and liberty. With it, anything's possible. Without it, without that right, nothing is possible.
The president pointed to a Supreme Court case from Alabama that could weaken the Voting Rights Act.
Again, that message has so much importance in my one life frame, for I have been silenced by I don't know what, and I don't know by whom, and like it feels like my entire life's been taken away from me. And I don't have the answers as to why it unfolded this way. So I go from that the BS this morning, or CBS mornings, to Andrew Womack Gospel Truth E47 to kind of offset it in like a peanut way, of there was a peanut farmer in charge when I got here. I know my local United States of America former president that they honor on like written into the landscape of Long Island and this area. So I'm keeping that in mind as well for like top doc, I need help kind of a way.
How things work in this kingdom. I've already covered a lot of material, but basically I started talking about all authority comes from God, but when God created the heavens and the earth, he gave authority to mankind over this physical earth. And by doing that, he limited his own authority because his word is his bond. He will not lie. He will not change. Psalms chapter 89.
I kept true with that in laws that I was able to uphold. I did not make promises to Benjamin I couldn't keep.
Verse 34 says, my covenant will I not break nor alter the thing that has gone forth out of my lips. So when God said, you have control, you have authority, dominion over this earth, and you subdue it, God would have been unjust to come down here and just intervene and change things. He gave that authority to us. And this explains, I spent quite a bit of time talking about why God had to become a man, because John chapter 4, verse 24 says, God is a spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. As a spirit, he did not have authority in this earth. Now, he had ownership. It was his by creation, but he gave the authority to delegate. He delegated the authority to rule and to reign over this planet to physical human beings. That's why Jesus had to become a man so that he could take back what mankind had given to the devil.
Now I listen to his words of wisdom with a grain of salt and with a filter that I use to interpret the message the way that I need, based on cosmic appearance and in the order of the planets and the stars. So again, like there is this concept I've heard of Sith, where it is what it is what it is. But then there's this layer of, yeah, but I mean, like, again, there's this intelligent saying, which is, now why are you trying to put a square peg in a round hole? Like, no, like, I need to know, because that sounds like a square peg trying to fit in a round hole. Not everybody knows what that means.
Also spent some time talking about that God created Lucifer, an angelic being that was in the Garden of Eden to serve mankind. But in a sense, mankind made Satan. We empowered him. When we yielded to him, we made him the God of this earth. You know, the scripture refers to Satan that way, the God of this world. Well, originally, mankind was intended to be the God, not capital G, not divine, but in power and authority. We empowered Satan. And the reason that that is so important to understand is because you need to understand that Satan got his power from us, not from God. He is not using his superior angelic power against us. He is using the authority and the power that God gave mankind. And so, therefore, he is totally dependent upon us cooperating with him in order for him to be able to do anything.
Now, I go back to wizards, witches, and things that I've read, words that they've used. There's this word called demon, demonstrative demon. I've heard this word used where there's something called a demon error in big, large systems analysis. When you work with computers, and I've heard the technicians. I'm not a technician technically myself, again, specialties being where specialties are. But when I've sat on the phone to see if my computer had a virus and to see what the humans were using or speaking about at Norton Technologies or Norton Security, the man got on the phone and sat with me for however long in order to look through my computer to see if I had a virus, whatever that means. But there were no demon errors in the terminal, the Apple terminal that I was sitting at that particular moment, whatever that means. Now, in translation to a higher order, that's at common, but at the higher upper chamber of the House of Lords. How does that equate out to rationally the big city Apple management in demons and errors? And then there's, of course, the first four letters of democracy is demo. Like, as in, you mean break down, demolish? That gets confusing. Is that, I mean, like, again, there's this between the Republic and the Democrats, they hold some natural balance of whatever between building and breaking down and whatever. I mean, again, I've seen in places like this demons mentioned in a different context. But of course, I have this other worldly knowledge of knowing that if it's there, it's possible that it's being used or interpreted in another fashion at a higher order of intelligence. So I'm listening to that as well.
So those are the things we've already covered and talked about and laid a foundation. But with that authority that God gives comes responsibility. And this is what I want to begin to talk about, that once you begin to understand that God gave authority over this earth to man, Jesus bought it back, but then he turned around and in Matthew chapter 28, he said, all authority in heaven and earth is given unto me. Go ye therefore, and he shared this authority with us. We are now co-heirs with Christ, is what it says in Romans chapter 8. So we share this authority, and if we are asking God to do what he told us to do, then that's totally out of whack. It says over in James chapter 4, verse 7, submit yourselves therefore unto God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. And when God said, you resist the devil, and he will flee from you, then that means that you can't ask God to resist the devil for you. He gave you authority over the devil. We have to resist the devil. We have to fight against him. And many, many, many Christians do not understand this. And so they come to God.
Yes. Because in my particular situation, in my particular area, the socio-political, the socio-economical, and the sociopaths are telling me this, but then there's a fight somewhere between the demonstrative and the republic. There's a fight that's then like there are people gathering and they're breaking the ground breaking, they're breaking laws, they're commingling. I mean, if I only have one bank account and somebody's telling me I must put someone else on my bank account and now all of a sudden commingle my personal funds in order to run my house with these people that I don't want to commingle my funds with them. Why are they through like sports arena and entertainment industry and all sorts of avenues of national security nightmare to untangle, but quantifiably it's like a real mess out there. I don't want to commingle stuff. I don't want to live in a mixed house. Why am I being forced out to the streets because somebody's forcing commingling of funds, of people, of ideals, of all sorts of stuff? What for? For whom? I mean, what is going to be left? That sounds like a really bad strategy. Seriously. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. It's Earth, solar system, Milky Way universe, galaxy is broken. And it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.